Let's talk about the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder from the DSM-5. That symptoms cause a significant impairment, deficits in social communication. This can look many different ways for many different people. Here are some of the things to look out for. Low back and forth conversation. Don't want to engage in turn taking in a conversation with somebody. They won't want to respond in a way that someone is expecting them to respond and continue the conversation, like asking questions or responding to their name. People with autism might be less likely to share their interests, and when you think about that, you're like, well, autism is special interests. This is different. It's a different kind of inorganic sharing of interests. It's very specific, it's regimented, it's routine. It's not the natural way that someone would continue the flow of a conversation, incorporating their interests and also asking about the interests of another person. You can see it in a person's affect, flat or constricted affect. Flat tone of voice, monotone, unusual speech. Some people have even said like autism voice or autism accent. Differences that are causing disruption in an area of life from a typical presentation that are causing impairment in a person. Maybe less likely to initiate social interaction. They might be willing to socialize, but the initiation of the interaction looks different. Maybe less polite, less formal, maybe more literal. There are also deficits in nonverbal communication for some people diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Limited verbal communication, limited words, not using sentences, being a Gestalt language processor. Ineffective verbal communication. When we're talking about interpersonal ineffectiveness, we're talking about a person not being able to convey their wants or their needs in a way that is understood by other people. That's where it becomes a deficit. Poor eye contact, limited use or understanding of gestures, non-typical use of gestures. Someone might not understand body language, or their body language may be very different from what someone is expecting. Some people with autism have reduced facial expressiveness, flat tone of voice, monotone, reduced use of gestures, reduced eye contact, reduced facial expressions. Deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. People with autism might struggle to adjust their behavior, such as at work or at church or in a family setting, to something that is socially acceptable. The inability to mask depending on a social situation. There are differences in the ways that a child with autism will play. Some patterns that are noticed are limited engagement in pretend play. A child wanting to engage in play where they line up items or count items or sort, organize items, rather than engaging in a pretend situation with the toys. Difficulty making friends. Absence of interest in peers. Black and white thinking leading to conflict and misunderstandings in relationships where someone might not understand the communication patterns of the person with autism, leading to conflict in the relationship and a breakdown, unable to understand how they're impacting it and what to do to maintain those relationships. Also, difficulty understanding idioms or language or slang or cultural jargon or whatever, not feeling like they fit in, not being able to make friends, not being able to keep friends once they have them. First part is deficits in social communication. We just went over that. The second part is restricted or repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, activities. Restricted behaviors, restricted interests, restricted activities. Repetitive behaviors, repetitive interests, repetitive activities. Repetitive movements or speech like echolalia, copying. That's part of what Gestalt language processing is about too, using chunks or phrases that they've heard before and made meaning out of that whole chunk instead of building sentences grammatically first. Insistence on sameness or routine, needing to do their routine or experiencing internal or externally extreme dysregulation if they're not able to go through their routine for whatever reason. This is interpreted as struggling with transitions and difficulty with change. Someone's not able to feel that consistency, maintain that consistency in their external environment, and it creates emotional dysregulation, transition in between activities. Intense focus. Once they get focused on something, they don't want it to be broken, or they will refuse for it to be broken. They will not comply with your demand and will continue to do what they're interested in. Occupations with unusual objects like lights or sounds or visuals repeated in a way that isn't understood by other people all the time. Sensory seeking behavior or sensory avoiding behavior. Sensory seeking behavior. Apparent inability to feel pain or seeking out things that are painful. Hitting their head, biting, pushing, pressure, falling, running, jumping, or seeking out loud noises. Bright lights. or sensory avoidance, sensory sensitive people. Unable to wear certain fabrics is sometimes how it presents. Sensitive to loud noises, sensitive to others, can be agoraphobic sometimes, sensitive to smells and tastes. This is where we see that avoidant, restrictive food intake with people with autism is part of this sensory component of the disorder. Detriments in different areas of your life. Having these behaviors, having these patterns, there's nothing wrong with them. When it reaches a point where the person is unable to maintain or regulate themselves, struggling significantly with housing or jobs or relationships or self-image or guilt or self-harm, that's when this becomes disordered. That's when behavior becomes disorders, is when the impact on a person's level of functioning is too high that they aren't able to manage these variations of normal by themselves. Support is needed. That's where diagnosis comes in.